We are back. Giants baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and it is a thrill for me to introduce a new member to the booth. He's a longtime journalist, official scorer with the Giants. His name is Michael Duca, and I am honored. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm quite well, thank you. Such an introduction, Ralph. I feel like I need to live up to it now.
Actually, it's understated. I don't have the words. We had a show together about a month ago, and it was so effortless. Our conversation just flowed, and your passion shows through. And it took me a while to put it together in my head. We had to make some compromises in the sense that you are an employee, technically, of Major League Baseball.
Yes, I am. As an official scorer, I'm actually a contracted employee of the Office of the Commissioner. I also MLB.com, which has its own set of special, shall we say, behaviors that are expected of us.
Right, and we could live up to that. You used a word that made me smile a little bit that we can't get into, but we'll do just fine. I want to have the Giant audi get to know you a little bit. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. Everybody I've ever contracted, if you will, dealt with as guests, as co-hosts on this network of mine, shares that they have an incredible passion for whatever it is we're talking about. We're mostly baseball. We do other sports. We do a political commentary show as well, but we all have a passion. How did you develop the passion for baseball?
Well, Ralph, I think my earliest living memory was watching the catch in the 1954 World Series on our 17-inch month television. I don't actually recall whether I watched it real time or whether I saw it on the news. I just remember seeing it. And from that, I got a little bit interested in baseball. I became a Giants fan very early on in my life, and when I got old enough to be able to figure out that baseball had existed for a while, I did a little bit of research and discovered that I, who was destined to cap out at 5'5" and never much of a player myself, was born approximately 3 hours before Eddie Gaedel came to the plate in Cleveland. And that's about the only thing of significance that has occurred on August 19th in baseball. And I found it somehow absolutely prosaic that the only time a little guy ever got to play the big game was the day I was born.
If to correct you is an honor that I never thought I'd share. It was St. Louis. It was Bill Veeck, but it was
You're right.
Before he bought the Indians, he was with the Browns. And he brought Eddie Gaedel up to bat.
Proof that this is not scripted.
Yeah, absolutely. We are as human as it gets, and that's what I like about it, is that we learn from each other on some levels. He wore 1/8. That was the number that was given to him. And Bill Veeck told him, if you swing the bat, we have a guy up in the stands with a gun pointed at you. If you swing a bat, he will shoot you. Scared the dickens out of the kid. And he took a walk. The pitcher was Sugar Cane, I remember correctly. And Yeah, so you were born at, I still got you in age, though. I'm a couple of years older than you. I think we're talking 1948. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, you've got a couple of years. You got 3 years on me, give or take, and my hope is that we can keep that spread for a while.
Oh, for a long time. I'm not going to have you catch up. I can't have anybody catch up. Yeah, let's do that. So you
Despite what Satchel said?
it brings to mind. We talk so much about books when you were here the first time. There was a book written, an entire book written by a fellow by the name of Arnold Hano, whom I was incredibly fortunate enough to have on these airwaves.
A Day in the Bleachers.
A Day in the Bleachers. He's in his 90s. He's as sharp as ever. John Loewenstein did a documentary about him, and he was nice enough to bring Mr. Hano to the airwaves. And when I was a kid, Mr. Hano wrote for the #1 magazine that we waited for every month, Sport. And he always seemed to have an article in there, and he was very well spoken. But to be able to write a book about literally one day, one game in the bleachers, Willie making the catch, and it wasn't even Willie making the catch so much, if you remember. It was Willie making the throw that kept the double play in order, and which was miraculous. Makes the throw, wheels around, makes the catch, wheels around, and throws it back in. Nice way to open your baseball fandom, Michael.
It was, and in fact, it was years later that I learned absolutely the best part of that play. The best part of that play was when left-handed relief pitcher Don Little walked back to the bench, tossed his glove in the corner, and said, "Well, I got my man."
Ball was hit by Vic Wertz maybe 480 feet to deepest part of center field. Anywhere else, it's a homer. And Willie tracks it down. But, Don Little from Joliet, Illinois.
It was the great Fred Haney who said of that play that the only man in the world. No, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I'm remembering something else. That might have been the play that sparked the rubric that we've heard many times since about how 4/5 of the world is covered with water and the other 5th is covered by Willie Mays.
Well, that one, again, might have been Maddox, another former Giants center fielder.
Well, it was subsequently said about him, but it was the earliest reference that I know of was to Willie Mays, but somebody probably said it about Chris Speaker, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's, just like in comedy, there's supposed to be only 6 jokes. Everything is a derivative of 6 basic jokes. I don't know what they are. 6 basic premises, I guess, rather.
Well, one of them might be this year's bullpen.
Yes. Give me a bit. I've, of late, done this show and really given the year that they've had, not made much reference to the 2017 Giants. What went good, if you will?
Well, Ty
Right.
Block went
that
good.
That answers it.
Christian Arroyo went good.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether we can say Buster Posey went good or not. He's definitely hitting with more authority and hitting for a higher average than he has in the past. He's got the 3rd highest home batting average in San Francisco history. But not a lot of power. He's turned into a doubles hitter. He seems to be going through a career progression that, in a little way, matches what Will Clark went through when he was at Candlestick, where he started out as almost a pure pull hitter and a power hitter, and eventually became a gap-to-gap doubles hitter.
Is that good? In a way, I mean, we're in an age where it's home runs or strikeouts, and very few accolades go to the table setters, even if they come in the middle of the lineup.
Right. It's, one of the reasons that Buster managed to make it to the All-Star break with something like 29 RBIs is that you can hit 360 and it doesn't do a lot of good if there's nobody on in front of you. On the other hand, I don't know any way to hit a 3-run home run without some guys who don't hit home runs.
Right. And I would say because of the way the pitching is, what with Bumgarner and going down, it does put more pressure on the offense. Because if you're giving up 5 runs instead of 3, all the way down the line, you're always playing catch-up, this, that, and the other thing. How is their defense held up?
The interior defense is great. Their outfield defense may be one of the worst we've ever seen. And by worst, I don't mean in the sense that the Oakland A's will go out there and give you a fighting chance at seeing an error called in every single game they play. And that a lot of that is just youth and inexperience. The Giants' outfield defense is bad in the sense that it just doesn't cover a lot of ground. They catch what they get to, but they don't get to enough. And there really isn't anybody out there with a really strong arm. Although, not that anybody can expect him to be a major league player coming up at age 29, but Carlos Moncrief certainly has shown that he has the tools out there. He was originally a pitcher, and he unleashes throws from the outfield at about 96 miles an hour. So he's got the arm, but the question is whether or not he's got the rest of the tools to stay in the big leagues.
That they did not make a move at the deadline, a significant move, does that really bode not well, given that...
No, I don't think so. In fact, I predicted that they wouldn't make any moves at the deadline. And the reason is that, all you have to do to figure out why is look at the standings. There are a couple of teams that are, 23, 24 lengths out in front of the rest of the pack. I mean, the Western Division races are like watching Secretariat and the Belmont at this point.
Right. Well, could they not have unloaded anybody for future prospects? Would that have...
Very hard. Very hard. There's a couple of reasons here. First of all, there's just not that many teams that are in contention. The wild card teams in the National League have a decent pad over the teams in third place. When the Cubs overtook the Brewers and took over first place, the Brewers dropped from being a division leader to being, I think, 7 games out of the wild card. That's how big that gap is. So there just weren't a lot of buyers. And if you're trying to sell into a strong buyer's market, no matter what you do, you're not going to get value received for value given. I think they were wise to hold on to people and wait till the off season when everybody, again, is no games out of first place and thinks they have a shot.
Michael, is Crawford's year just a blip on the radar screen, or is this, is this real concern?
I would have to say that there's a third possibility here, which is both of those could be true. It can be a blip. It's still a thing of concern. You don't ever want your up-the-middle guys to be out there hitting 230. And Crawford's a guy who has given them a lot of clutch hits and a lot of power. By the same token, baseball players are a strange breed of cat, and it's really fascinating to me. I think one of the great untold stories of this Giants franchise is how many years Dave Righetti has been the pitching coach and been successful at it. If I'm not mistaken, he's the longest tenured pitching coach in all of the major leagues with his current team. And if he's not, then he's second only behind the guy down in Los Angeles. So it just doesn't seem to matter. Players will listen to a coach for a while, and then the message develops enough similarity that I think the brain says, okay, we've heard this before, we don't need to listen to it now. And that's what people mean when they say you need a different voice. I don't think that Hensley Mullins is doing anything wrong as a hitting coach. I know that these guys are working really hard. I know that nobody has, if you go out there and watch them play, they are not playing like they're 35 games out of first place. But the results simply aren't there this year. And I don't have an answer to that. It's a general malady that seems to be inflicting the entire offense. Some guys are probably aging out of their prime years. I don't think Crawford is. I don't think Joe Panik is. I don't think Brandon Belt is. And, by some measures, Brandon Belt is just being expected to do more than I think is reasonable for him to be expected to do. The guy has, I think he's third all time in San Francisco for on base plus slugging. I mean,
really?
This is a guy who gets on base a tremendous amount of the time because he has, I think, maybe the best eye of any hitter, certainly in the Giants organization and maybe in the National League. This is a guy who rarely, the other night I saw him take a called third strike that on the pitch tracks was maybe an inch off the plate, and that's Brandon Belt's eye. He can tell when the ball's an inch off the plate, and he's going to lay off of that. The umpire in that particular instance decided to call that pitch a strike, which is perfectly okay. When the umpires are graded on whether they get their balls and strikes correctly, anything that is a ball's width off of the plate is automatically correct no matter what they call it. They can call it a ball, which it is. They can call it a strike, which it could be conceivably seen to be because it's still touching the plate on the edge. There was nothing wrong with being called out on strikes in that situation, but it shows you his plate discipline. Discipline includes believing in what you see and acting accordingly on it. And he saw it as being off the plate, which it was, let it go by. Belt has, I think, as much discipline and discernment at the plate as anyone. He also has a fairly substantial hole in his swing, and that's below the hands down to about mid-thigh on the inside part of the plate. And everybody in baseball knows it, and they pitch in there. Other guys on the team, you have to wonder about Hunter Pence. This was an Iron Man who, probably single-handedly did more for the kale industry in this country than anyone else. And all of a sudden, once he, got his first major league injury, he's been in and out and more out than in. And we're just not seeing very much out of him when he is, when he's healthy and playing now. He's got one home run this year that was pulled to left field. The Giants have. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that is so common with injuries where a player will, for instance, throw out a left knee, and compensate, and pretty soon a right ankle goes bad. And you compensate for that, and a left hip goes bad, and pretty soon a career goes.
Isn't that just getting older, Ralph? Isn't that what you and I are doing?
No, because I have no hill to be over. So you wouldn't be able to notice any drop off whatsoever. But that's just speaking for myself. But no, I don't think it's aged so much. I've seen that with young players as well over the years. That again, one injury leads to another, and pretty soon you're rehabbing everything, and you gotta have a sound footing on you to rehab your upper body, and it just goes downhill from there. Remember, we're talking about world-class athletes, so their brain. If one guy gets hurt like that and keeps, going downhill because he's compensating, there's going to be somebody else coming in right off, right up there, which increases the pressure. Speaking of which, not even Giant related, the big story in baseball this year has been Aaron Judge with the Yankees. And of late, not saying that he's totally tanked, but has he gotten too much accolades too early? Does that put pressure on? Is that baseball just looking for another star reaching out? What's your take on Aaron Judge?
Well, you've opened up a rich vein here. I'm gonna first of all, at this point in his career, if you want to look for a comparison, Yankee fans will remember this name. How about Bob Moss?
Kevin Moss?
No, Bob Moss was a left-handed first baseman in the late 80s or early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, maybe in the mid-90s. Came out of Cal. And he had something like a 30-plus home run rookie season and was going to be, the next Lou Gehrig. And he turned out to be more like the next Wally Pipp. It's just, after that first year, the league kind of figured him out. This is why I always caution people when you're seeing rookies just tear it up. Remember that the other side gets to analyze what's going on and react. It's not how you hit when you come up to the major leagues that matters. It's how you hit when you have to make adjustments to how they've adjusted to you that matters. And we might be seeing some of that in the case of Aaron Judge.
Right.
I definitely think that if Aaron Judge had been drafted by the Tampa Bay Rays, that it would be a very different storyline. I think that there is no doubt in my mind that if you wear Yankee pinstripes, you are automatically bigger and better than anybody else who ever played the game. There's the infamous New York attitude to go along with the more infamous Yankee attitude, which is perfectly amplified by the New York press. The combination of all of those things tends to over-exaggerate in both directions on players. I'm not sure that I would ever be so desperate for TV ratings that I would throw a player with a half a year of Major League experience into the home run derby. There are just too many instances of players having their swings wrecked by that for it to just be anecdotal at this point.
Right. That's a good point. I forgot about that. That may have absolutely contributed to his downfall. There's still time. I mean, but I think he's hitting like 241 since the All-Star break. And he's starting to strike out more. He's starting to not lay off pitches that surprised everybody early on when he did make that big change in his game.
And what happens after the All-Star break, Ralph? What happens in baseball?
What happens in baseball?
You start to see teams again. You start to see teams again. Now we're finding out about adjustments.
That's true. And pitchers are going to make adjustments. He's got to make adjustments back, and then pitchers will make adjustments. That's what baseball is all about. It always has been. So we'll see. I just kind of smiled. There's a Facebook page, a baseball Facebook page, something about Aaron Judge, the next coming of this, the next coming of that. And I thought about guys like Joe Charbonneau and Mark the Bird Fidridge and a whole bunch of folks who just started out with these great big bangs. Giants, now maybe you can help me go back. His name started with an H, if I'm not mistaken, and he had this, in the 70s, he had this incredible spring. It was about the time when Matthews and Maddox and Goodson, all these guys.
Are you thinking of Randy Elliott?
Yeah, yes. Randy, why I said age. Did he not have he hit like 360 in Phoenix. And,
no. He hit closer
maybe
to 5.
Maybe it wasn't Randy.
Phoenix.
Randy,
yeah, he hit closer to 560 in Phoenix that spring. It was, no fence was safe from Randy Elliott in March. By the time April rolled around and he got to the big leagues, he would be lucky if he bruised a baby's lips with a line drive.
All right. So I do remember correctly that guy, and so much was made of that. It was a year, as you say, it was 76, and I think the Giants were faltering. Those were not good, particularly good years, and they were reaching out. Might have been one of the Speck Richardson years. Might have been Tom Haller, too. Memory goes, young man. You'll see. 3 years from now.
I would say I've already seen, but I'm not sure if I can remember whether I've seen or not.
Right. That's something to think about. Scares me this. I joke about it, but it scares me at the end what people go through struggling with memory and what have you, and how frustrating that has to be. Like misplacing your keys 24/7 in your mind. So let's hope that it doesn't come to that. At least I hope to forget the password to get into this thing before that stuff happens. So I don't have to embarrass myself for future generations. Look back, was that on YouTube? Are you kidding me?
Oh, no.
What would they say? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, Lordy. Hey, thank you, sir.
I think the good news for us, Ralph, is that we live in an age where neither you nor I, if we put together all of our collective creative genius, could come up with a single thing more embarrassing than the Daily News.
Having grown up in New York, I concur. You didn't mean the New York Daily News. You meant the Daily. Well, we're right on both counts.
Yeah, okay.
Let's put it that way. Only to be outdone by the New York Post.
You grew up there. Remind me, was it the Post? Is it the Post that was founded by Alexander Hamilton?
I don't think it was. I think Murdoch.
One of those two
more
papers
importantly,
was
Murdoch
founded.
runs it now. The Post used to be one hell of a sports page. They had Leonard Schechter and Leonard Cobbett writing columns adjacent to each other. They complemented themselves, each other so well. Just as an example, there were like 12 papers in New York when I was a kid growing up. And we had writers like Red Smith and Dick Young and a lot of guys don't come to mind right at this minute. But it was a good time to grow up, and you grew up out here, am I correct?
To the extent that I grew up, yes.
Okay. What part of California?
The northern part is probably the safest way to answer that question. I was, as the song goes, I was born in East LA, back when it was right at the edge of farmland. It was bean fields. We moved to the Bay Area in 1954. We moved to Sacramento in 1956. Then we moved to San Diego in the midst of the 1962 World Series. I was probably the most miserable 11-year-old striding the planet. Then we lived there for 4 years, moved to Los Angeles for 2 years. I went back to San Diego to go to college, and then moved up here to the Bay Area as soon as practicable after getting out of college, and I haven't left. This has always felt like home, despite the fact that I was born in Southern California.
Michael, did you go into journalism first and then drift into sports writing and baseball, or did you go into journalism with the idea that you're going to go into sports writing and baseball?
Well, I think the first thing to say here is that there's no journalism school in my background. There's a lot of writing, but there's no journalism school. My first byline was on September 3rd of 1966 in the Pasadena Star-News, and I was the beat reporter for all major sports at Pasadena High School.
Wow.
So I started sports. I covered CIF playoffs in the LA area, and I also did the state track meet, which was held at I want to say Redlands University, if I'm not mistaken. It was somewhere out there by Loma Linda, and a couple of very famous guys ran the high hurdles that year. The kid who finished first was from Santa Rosa, and his name was Mel Gray. Went on to a pretty good NFL career with the St. Louis Cardinals. I
knew that. Yes. He was a defensive back, was he not?
Uh-huh. And the guy who finished second to him was a young kid out of Rancho Cordova named Johnny B. Baker.
Yes, originally from where you were from, down south, and came up.
Born in Riverside, friends with the Bonds family as a kid, and then they moved to Sacramento, where I also lived. So Dusty's been following.
And what a rich baseball history in Sacramento with Weinstein at Sac City, Jerry Weinstein, future guest, as a matter of fact, on these airwaves. And, Johnny Lee Baker came out of there. Jim Barr, if I'm not mistaken, came out of there. There were a lot of ball players came out of Sacramento. Hotbed.
Oh yeah, Randy Lurch came from there. I'm blanking.
Kid played center field when Henry Aaron hit his home run. Roland, I can't think of his name.
Roland
Office, yes, from Sacramento. And then there was two brothers, power hitting brothers, LeGrew, blank on those two. But I lived up in Sacramento.
Are you?
Pardon me?
You're not thinking of Laren LeGros, are you?
Laren, and he had a brother as well. Two brothers.
I remember Laren LeGros, but I vaguely remember him as being a pitcher, but I could be wrong.
No, they were hitters. They were...
okay. Of course, if you go back further, Jim Pagliarone, Kuno Berrigan, Woody Held.
Yes, Kuno Berrigan with the Cubs. He was 1962, and he sold insurance to Kuno Berrigan for Cal Farm. Now, I sold insurance back in those days, and this was the late 60s, early 70s, for New York Life. And he and I attended many state meetings and what have you together. Very nice gentleman, Kuno Berrigan.
Yeah, Jim Pagliarulo wound up with a frozen food distributorship up in Grass Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Tiny Felder was from that area.
Yeah, Steve Sachs was from West Sacramento, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yes, he was. And as I said earlier, I don't know if you heard Larry Boa, of course.
Yes, I didn't hear that, but he was from Sacramento. I don't know why my mind is blanking about Sacramento athletes, but there was a kid, a catcher too, Haywood.
Not Haywood, Sullivan.
No, not Haywood Sullivan. Alameda too is replete with a number of great athletes where you lived.
Yes. Chris Beyer, Dontrell Willis, Jimmy Rollins.
Stargill.
Stargill.
Rollins went to Encinal High School here.
Mm-hmm.
There was Bob Kennedy lived here for a while. Bill Rigney, Andy Carey lived and played ball in Sacramento or in Alameda. So we're blessed to be up in Northern California, my friend, and I'd like to officially welcome you to the Comfortably Radio Network, and I'm proud and honored to have you, Michael. Michael Duca.
Well, it's a distinct pleasure to be here and to be participating with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, let me list some of your credits. You work from MLB.com, and you're also licensed as contracted as an official scorer. I don't know, do you do the A's as well or just the Giants?
Yes, I do. I work for both teams.
Oh, wow. You have it made. What a way to make bucks. Go out to the ball game, pay a little attention, which we should all be doing, is all it basically takes. Do you ever feel that you make a mistake when you make a ruling, an official scoring ruling? Do you ever look back and say, that one, I could have done better on that one?
I'll explain it this way, Ralph. I've been doing it for, I think, 13 years now. And in my career, I have had 2 calls overturned. 2. Neither of them, in my mind, should have been, but I can think of a dozen others that were never appealed that, in retrospect, I have grave doubts about. If you're not making mistakes, you're probably playing the safe route too much. You know, it's you're paid to make judgments. You're paid to call on your experience. I have put my tuchus in the seat at a ballpark and watched over 3,000 Major League games.
Wow.
And you mentioned the name earlier. The guy who probably taught me more about official scoring than anyone else was Leonard Coppett. And Leonard basically said, trust your instincts. You've seen the game played enough. You've seen the game played more than most of the players out there have. So it's not, as I like to tell people, it's not rocket surgery, but you do have to pay attention, and you do have to, I think, have a couple of very important attitudes. One is that I view myself as a custodian of the comparability of baseball over different eras. I try to maintain the integrity of the statistics that people use to have arguments in bars every night. The second thing that I think you have to keep in mind is that my job is to get it right, not to be right. I cannot have any pride of authorship in a decision, and you always have to be willing to look at it again, and when you do look at it again, to look at it as much as you can with brand new eyes. You have to be in a situation where you're giving an honest second look at it and paying attention to what other people point out.
Now all that is quick too. It's like in the first 2 minutes of the call being made.
Generally speaking, it's within the first probably 30 to 40 seconds. But Leonard told me, pay attention to your inner voice. When you see a ball hit, if the first thing that goes through your mind is that's an out, and it turns out that it's not, chances are it was an error. If you see a guy try to make a play and fail, and your thought is, boy, that would have been a hell of a play if he'd have made it, that's probably a hit. You trust your instincts. You trust your experience more than anything else. But I also will say this. One of the other jobs that I've done for Major League Baseball is work the clock, the clock that is being used to time between innings now and visits to the mound by pitching coaches and such. The first year that we did that, it wasn't a clock. We had a stopwatch that we used, and we had big pieces of colored acrylic plastic to show the press box and to show the umpires, when we were getting down to 20 seconds to coming back, when we were back from commercial, that kind of thing. And to do that, we were actually on the field. I was in the photographer's pit at AT&T, and I was sitting right at the door that the umpires used to enter and exit the field in the backstop in Oakland. That was probably the best thing that ever happened to me as an official scorer, spending a year down there on the field maybe 30 or 35 times and really understanding the speed at which the game occurs. You just don't see how fast it is from up in the stands, which is why retired ball players always tell you, boy, the game looks easier from up here.
Gotcha. Speaking of the A's, do they not miss Ron Washington, defensive coach? Incredibly.
I made that specific comment the other day when watching Marcus Semien make just a brilliant play on defense and then throw the ball to like row 17 of section 112. It's you can see if you can see a lack of confidence in somebody's feet, Marcus Semien shows it to you.
Right. Well, Washington would have had him turned around the first month.
Well, Washington did have him turned around, but he's gone. And
what happened with that? Was that just an ego thing with him and Melvin? Was Melvin afraid of not being able to keep his job?
I don't know, and I don't think so. I think Wash just got another opportunity elsewhere to do a little bit more than he was being allowed to do in Oakland. I'm sure he is very grateful to the Oakland organization for giving him the opportunity to come back in the game after some personal issues caused him to decide to step away for a while. And I know he is with another team this year. For the life of me, I'm blanking on where he wound up going. But
I think it's the Braves. I think he wants to be closer to home in Atlanta, but I could be wrong on that, too.
I think that's true, although Wash is from New Orleans.
But it's the South.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably had part to do with it. That's why he took the Texas job in the first place, was to be closer to home. It's hard for me to imagine. I mean, I've known Bob Melvin since he was a player. I cannot see Bob Melvin getting involved in office politics, if you will.
Right.
I suppose it's
possible. He was a player in the days of Melvin and Spillner, the law firm of Melvin and Spillner.
Well, I remember that he was a player in the days when the Giants had two catchers, and they were both named Bob.
Right.
And so, and
from Bob Brenly and Bob Melvin,
which is
Melvin
why
was
to this day they are known as Bo Mel and Bo Bren.
Right. And let's give Cal a little credit, Northern California baseball, for producing a myriad of players. Bob Melvin, probably the brightest of them. And I love those late 80 teams the Giants played for, that Melvin played for. 87, Krukow, and all those guys, Leonard and Clark and Thompson. Good days. Tell me an Al Rosen story, and then I'll let you go.
The Giants Tuesday received, I guess, just the latest in what has been a season of unrelenting sadness for this team. There have been so many deaths that have affected the team. And in this case, it was David Loewenstein. David was 60 years of age. He was Al Rosen's adopted stepson. David had been a clubhouse attendant and an umpire's room attendant for, more than 30 years. David was born with serious medical challenges. I believe by the time he passed this week, he was down to about 22 inches of intestine. He had Crohn's disease forever. He had diabetes as a result of the Crohn's disease. David was gregarious. He had a smile for everyone. His nickname was Rolo. The players teased him mercilessly, which is the way that they show love and affection. There is nothing that tells you you've been accepted in a clubhouse more than if a player comes up and rips on you, as strange as that sounds. And David was with the team for 30 years because when Al Rosen took the job as general manager, he said, I have one condition. My stepson comes with me, and he has a job as long as he can work. That's a piece of Al Rosen that very few people knew about.
Nice. Rest in peace, Mr. Loewenstein.
Yeah, David was a special guy.
Always. As are you, sir. Thank you for accepting this kind invitation, as it were, to join me and keep the memory of the Giants alive and try to see what's happening in the future and, again, trying to put a positive note on it. And this is going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy this. Same time, same bat channel next week.
All right, and by next week, maybe we'll be able to evaluate the two new players that they brought up today, which is Jarrett Parker and Ryder Jones.
May I ask you if you don't agree that this Chinese kid or Korean kid, Howe, is not a terrific fielding third baseman? Did he open your eyes a little bit?
He did. He did. He's got to be able to show plate discipline, and he's got to be able to hit the ball in the major leagues. I have the feeling that major league breaking pitches are a little bit better disguised than breaking pitches in the Korean leagues because he has not yet learned to lay off the slider down and away and in the dirt. But if he can become a major league hitter, I think he can become a contributor. I don't know if he'll be a contributor at the level that Gong was in Pittsburgh before his DUI difficulties kept him out of the country this year. But I think he can be a solid contributor and, everybody's looking for their own Ben Zobrist. A guy who can play infield, outfield, here, there, everywhere. And
I think that's what the Mets are trying to do with Cabrera. If give him a little versatility. And, in today's day and age when you're 25 guys and you're carrying 14 pitches, you got to have guys who can play all over.
Exactly that. The Giants traded away their guy with Edwin Nunez, and strangely enough, the A's traded away their guy in Adam Rosales. So, both teams are now.
Did they do that? I missed that. They did that again? They got rid of Rosales again?
The Diamondbacks second baseman Chris Owings broke the middle finger on his throwing hand on the Sunday before the Monday noon trade deadline. And so they needed a fill-in for about 6 weeks, basically. As David Force said, he said, we've traded Rosie again, but he knows how to get back here.
He's got the compass set. He's on his way. All right, sir. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week, and everybody out there, keep on keeping on. Thank you, David. Michael. Did I say David? Great way to end.
I just assumed
we'll just have to start all over again with this one. Take two. We are back. Never mind. See you next week, sir.
All right. Take care.
I enjoyed it. Be well.